Charon. Before you even reach Cerberus, you have to deal with Charon, and Charon will not work for free. The ancient ferryman of the dead was responsible for transporting newly deceased souls across the rivers Styx and Acheron into the underworld, and his fee was a single coin, an obol. Which is why the ancient Greeks placed coins on the eyes or in the mouths of their dead before burial. No coin, no crossing. Souls who couldn't pay were left to wander the near shore for 100 years before Charon would take them, condemned to drift in a gray liminal nothing while the rest of the dead moved on. Charon himself was described as filthy and ancient, a hunched figure with a scraggly white beard and eyes described in some accounts as burning like coals, pulling his rotting wooden boat through water so dark it reflected nothing. He appears in Virgil's Aeneid, in Dante's Inferno, and in dozens of ancient Vase paintings, always the same, old, grim, and completely indifferent to the suffering of his passengers. He's not cruel. He simply does not care. Minos. In life, Minos was the king of Crete. In death, he became something far more powerful, the judge of the dead. Greek tradition placed 3 judges in the underworld, Minos, Rhadamanthus, and Iacchus, tasked with reviewing the lives of every soul that arrived and assigning them to the correct region of the afterlife. Minos held the senior position. Dante, who was a devoted student of classical mythology, brought Minos into the Inferno but transformed him into something grotesque and new. In Dante's version, Minos stands at the entrance to Hell's circles as a massive demonic figure who wraps his tail around his own body to indicate a soul's punishment. 2 wraps for the second circle, 7 for the 7th, and so on down to the 9th. Every soul who arrives cannot help but confess everything to him. He listens, he judges, he points downward. In both the Greek and the Dantean versions, the message is the same. There is no appeal, no second opinion, and no mercy. The math of your life has already been calculated. Hecate. Not every creature of hell is a tormentor. Some simply own the threshold itself. Hecate, the Greek goddess of witchcraft and crossroads, was one of the few divine beings who moved freely between the world of the living and the realm of the dead. And she was terrifying precisely because of that freedom. She is typically depicted in triple form, 3 bodies standing back to back, each holding a torch, a shape designed for watching all directions at once. She roamed the boundary zones, graveyards, crossroads at midnight, the entrances to the underworld. Offerings called Hecate's suppers were left at crossroads on the last night of each month, consisting of food, garlands, and torches, intended to appease her and the spirits of the restless dead that traveled with her. In Dante's Inferno, the 3 Furies summon her by name at the gates of the city of Dis, screaming for Medusa on her behalf. Hecate didn't need to torture anyone. She simply made clear that the boundary between life and death was her territory, and she decided who crossed it. The Erinyes Furies. The 3 Furies, Alecto, Megara, and Tisiphone, are older than most of the gods, and their origin is appropriately violent. According to Hesiod, they were born from the blood of Uranus when he was castrated, which means they predate Zeus, predate the Olympians, and answer to no one. Their names mean, respectively, unceasing anger, jealousy, and vengeance for murder. Their targets were specific: those who murdered family members, broke sacred oaths, or defied the natural order. They pursued their targets relentlessly, armed with iron whips, burning torches, and hair made entirely of writhing snakes, not to kill them, but to drive them insane, which was considered worse. Orestes, who killed his own mother, Clytemnestra, was hounded by them across Greece until Athena herself had to intervene and put them on trial in Aeschylus's play the Oresteia. Dante encountered them in the Inferno, standing on the walls of the city of Dis, drenched in blood, screaming for Medusa. Even there, far from Olympus and deep in Christian hell, the Furies were exactly as they had always been: furious, relentless, and completely uninterested in forgiveness. Thanatos. Most cultures imagine death as something monstrous. The Greeks imagined him as beautiful, and that made him somehow more unsettling. Thanatos was the personification of peaceful death, twin brother of Hypnos, the god of sleep, and son of Nyx, the goddess of night. While violent death was handled by other figures, Thanatos was the one who came for you when your time simply arrived, and his touch was described as painless, even gentle. The twins were often depicted together in art, one dark-winged and one white-winged, resting or sleeping side by side. What makes Thanatos remarkable in mythology is that he was twice defeated by mortals. Sisyphus chained him. While Thanatos was bound, no human being could die, causing chaos across the world until Ares freed him. Later, Heracles physically wrestled him to save the life of Alcestis. The god of death was pinned to the ground by a man. He lost. But Thanatos is patient in a way no mortal can match. He always collects in the end. Hades. The ruler of the underworld is one of the most misunderstood figures in all of mythology. Hades is not evil. He is not cruel. He did not choose his domain. After the Titans were defeated, the three sons of Kronos drew lots for their kingdoms, and Hades pulled the underworld while Zeus took the sky and Poseidon claimed the sea. He accepted the result and ruled his domain with complete and unfeeling neutrality, which is precisely why the other gods feared him. He almost never left the underworld, rarely intervened in mortal affairs, and his name was so dreaded that Greeks often avoided saying it aloud, using euphemisms like the Rich One or the Invisible One instead. His weapon was not a sword, but the Helm of Darkness, which made him completely invisible. He used it in the war against the Titans, not in punishing souls. He was not the devil. He was something arguably colder. A ruler who neither hated you nor pitied you, who simply enforced the permanent, unchangeable fact of death. The Tartarus Titans. Below Hades, below everything, is Tartarus. A pit so deep that according to Hesiod, an anvil dropped from the surface of the earth would fall for 9 days before reaching it. This is where Zeus imprisoned the Titans after the Titanomachy, the war between the older and newer gods, sealing them in bronze walls behind bronze gates. Their guards were the Hecatonchires, 3 beings named Briareos, Cottus, and Gyges, each with 100 hands and 50 heads, so terrifying that even the Titans feared them. But Tartarus was not only for the Titans. Individual sinners were condemned there with punishments engineered for maximum psychological cruelty. Tantalus, who served his own son as food to the gods, was made to stand in a pool of water beneath fruit trees, both receding the instant he reached for them, the origin of the word torment. Sisyphus rolls his boulder uphill forever, watching it roll back every time he nears the top. Ixion spins on a burning wheel of fire for eternity. Tartarus is where Greek mythology put the people it had truly given up on. Lucifer/Satan. The name Lucifer means light bearer in Latin, which tells you everything about how far this figure was said to fall. According to Christian tradition, drawing on Isaiah 14:12 and later theological development, Lucifer was the most beautiful and powerful of God's angels before pride drove him to rebellion, after which he was cast out of heaven and became the ruler of hell. The popular image, red skin, horns, a pitchfork, is largely a medieval European invention layered over centuries of earlier tradition. Dante's version is the most striking and the least expected. At the absolute center of hell, frozen waist-deep in ice, is a weeping giant so enormous that his arms alone are larger than the tallest giants in the poem. He has 3 faces, blood red in the center, pale yellow on the left, and dark black on the right, and each mouth eternally chews one of history's greatest traitors. The center mouth holds Judas Iscariot, spine visible where the skin has been stripped away. The other 2 hold Brutus and Cassius, who betrayed Julius Caesar. Satan in Dante is not raging. He is trapped, weeping, and utterly powerless, which Dante considered a far more devastating punishment than fire. Lilith. According to a medieval Jewish text called the Alphabet of Ben Sira, written somewhere between the 8th and 10th centuries CE, Lilith was Adam's first wife, created from the same earth as him, not from his rib, and therefore, in her view, his equal. When she refused to be subservient, she spoke the ineffable name of God, flew out of Eden, and became a demon of the night. 3 angels, Senoi, Sansanoi, and Samangeloth, were sent to bring her back. She refused. As a consequence, Lilith became associated with infant death, nighttime illness, and the seduction of sleeping men, and Jewish households for centuries placed amulets bearing the 3 angels' names above cradles to protect newborns from her. In Kabbalistic tradition, she rules over a host of demons called the Lilan, her offspring, and reigns as a queen of the demonic realm alongside the fallen angel Samael. It is worth noting that the word translated as Lilith in Isaiah 34:14 is disputed. Some scholars read it as a night creature, others as a proper name. The tradition built around her, however, is anything but ambiguous. Asmodeus. One of the most consistently named demons across multiple religious traditions, Asmodeus, appears in the deuterocanonical Book of Tobit with a very specific and murderous habit. He killed 7 consecutive husbands of a woman named Sarah on each of their wedding nights before the marriage could be consummated. The angel Raphael ultimately defeated him by instructing Tobias to burn the heart and liver of a fish, the smell of which drove Asmodeus to Egypt, where Raphael bound him. In the Ars Goetia, the 17th century grimoire compiling 72 demons said to have been bound by King Solomon, Asmodeus is ranked as a king of hell, commanding 72 legions of demons, fitting company for a demon associated with lust, obsession, and the corruption of marriages. His physical description in demonological texts is extravagant: 3 heads belonging to a bull, a man, and a ram, mounted on a body with a serpent's tail, riding a dragon, and breathing fire. The gap between that image and the relatively contained figure in Tobit is significant, and it shows how a demon's reputation tends to grow across centuries. Beelzebub, the name itself, is an insult. Beelzebub is a deliberate Hebrew mockery of the Philistine god Baal-zebul, meaning Lord of the High Place, a title of genuine divine power. Jewish scribes transformed it into Baal-zebub, Lord of the Flies, reducing a foreign deity to a god of insects and filth. The name appears as early as 2 Kings 1:2, where the Israelite king Ahaziah sends messengers to consult him. By the time of the New Testament, Beelzebub had become synonymous with the prince of demons. In Matthew 12:24, the Pharisees accused Jesus of casting out demons by the power of Beelzebub, using the name as shorthand for the supreme demonic authority. Whether Beelzebub is a separate entity from Satan or simply an alternate name for the same being is a question that has genuinely divided theologians across denominations and centuries without resolution. John Milton settled the matter for literature if not for theology. In Paradise Lost, Beelzebub is Satan's second in command, the first fallen angel Satan addresses after landing in hell, described as majestic in ruin even in his fallen state. Mephistopheles. Unlike most of the figures on this list, Mephistopheles does not appear to have ancient origins. Historians believe he was likely invented specifically for the Faust chapbooks of 16th century Germany, the earliest major printed source being the Historia von die Johann Faustin from 1587, rather than being drawn from older religious demonology. What made him endure is his personality. Mephistopheles is not a screaming monster. He is patient, witty, sarcastic, and almost charming. A demon who would rather win through contract than through force, who offers exactly what you want and waits for you to ruin yourself with it. In Goethe's Faust, published in 1808 and considered one of the greatest works in the German language, Mephistopheles describes himself as part of that force which always wills evil and always works good, meaning his schemes always backfire in the long run, even when he wins the immediate deal. The scholar Faust bargained his soul for unlimited knowledge and pleasure, and Mephistopheles delivered everything meticulously while waiting for the moment of collection. He is the most bureaucratic of demons, and somehow that makes him the most believable. Baphomet. Almost everything the modern world believes about Baphomet is younger than the United States. The familiar image, a goat-headed, winged hermaphroditic figure seated within a pentagram, was designed by the French occultist Eliphas Lévy in 1856 and published in his book D'Art, Dogmes et Rituels de la Haute Magie. Lévy called it the sabbatic goat and intended it as a symbol of the reconciliation of opposites, male and female, human and animal, material and spiritual. The association with Satan and hell came later, primarily through 19th and 20th century occultism. The name itself is older. It appears in the 1307 trial of the Knights Templar, who were accused of worshipping an idol called Baphomet. Historians broadly agree that those confessions were extracted under torture and that the idol likely never existed. What exactly the name meant even to the Templar accusers remains unclear, with proposed etymologies including a corruption of Muhammad, a Sufi term, and a Latin-Greek cipher, none of which have been definitively proven. The modern Baphomet is, in the most literal sense, a 19th century invention given a medieval name, Azazel. In the Book of Enoch, a Jewish apocalyptic text not included in most biblical canons, Azazel is named as one of the leaders of the Watchers, 200 fallen angels who descended to earth, married human women, and taught humanity things they were not supposed to know. Azazel's specific contributions to human corruption included teaching men to make swords, shields, and body armor, and teaching women the art of cosmetics and jewelry. God's response was unambiguous. The angel Raphael was instructed to bind Azazel hand and foot, throw him into a desert called Dudael, cover him with sharp rocks and darkness, and leave him there until Judgment Day, at which point he would be thrown into fire permanently. The Book of Enoch, chapters 8 through 10, describes this in precise and almost bureaucratic detail. Azazel's name also appears in Leviticus 16, where on Yom Kippur, one goat was sacrificed to God and another was sent to Azazel in the wilderness, symbolically carrying the sins of Israel. Whether the Leviticus reference means a place, a concept, or a specific demonic being is a question Jewish scholars have debated for centuries without consensus. Abaddon/Apollyon. In the Hebrew scriptures, Abaddon simply means destruction or place of destruction, a synonym for the realm of the dead, appearing in Job and Psalms as a poetic term for the abyss. In the New Testament's book of Revelation, the word becomes a name. When the fifth angel sounds the fifth trumpet in Revelation 9, a star falls from heaven and opens the bottomless pit, releasing smoke, and from the smoke, a swarm of locust-like creatures, armored in gold, with human faces, women's hair, lion's teeth, and scorpion tails, commanded by their king, Abaddon. The text names him in both Hebrew and Greek, calling him Apollyon in Greek, meaning the destroyer, which is unusual. Revelation rarely stops to provide translations. Whatever the author intended by the double naming, medieval demonologists took Apollyon seriously, ranking him as a king of hell. John Bunyan made him the terrifying villain of an entire episode in Pilgrim's Progress in 1678, describing a confrontation in the Valley of Humiliation where Apollyon straddles the road and tells the protagonist he will spill his soul. The monster from the bottomless pit had become a literary figure, and the literary figure was arguably more frightening. Hellhounds. The idea of a massive supernatural dog guarding the boundary between the living and the dead appears in nearly every culture that has a concept of an underworld, which tells you something about how deep the fear runs. In Norse mythology, the Houndgarm is chained at the entrance to Hell, the Norse realm of the dead, and according to the prose, Edda will break free at Ragnarok, the end of the world, to battle the god Tyr, both of them killing each other in the process. In British folklore, the Black Shuck haunts the roads of East Anglia, an enormous black dog with a single glowing eye whose appearance is said to foretell the death of whoever sees it. In American blues tradition, the hellhound became a cultural symbol through Robert Johnson's 1937 recording Hellhound on My Trail, part of the mythology surrounding his supposed crossroads deal with the devil. Every tradition finds its own variation, but the core image never changes. Enormous, dark, and always between you and wherever you were hoping to go. Lamia. The original Lamia was a queen, a mortal woman loved by Zeus, which in Greek mythology is effectively a curse. When Hera discovered the affair, she killed all of Lamia's children, and the grief and rage transformed Lamia into a monster, the upper body of a beautiful woman, the lower body of a serpent, and eyes she could remove from their sockets and place aside when she needed to rest from the unceasing vision of her dead children. According to the account in Diodorus Siculus, Zeus gave her this ability as a small mercy. She spent eternity in caves and wilderness, devouring children as substitutes for her grief. Over time, Lamia became a class of creatures, the Lamiae, demons who seduced men, drank their blood, and consumed their flesh, blending into early vampire and succubus mythology. John Keats gave her a more sympathetic treatment in his 1820 poem Lamia, reimagining her as a serpent transformed into a woman who genuinely loves a human man, only to be destroyed when a philosopher exposes her true nature at her own wedding feast. 2,000 years of tradition, and she still doesn't get a happy ending. Empusa. One of the lesser-known but genuinely strange creatures in Greek mythology, Empusa served Hecate as a shape-shifting demon who haunted crossroads and the entrances to the underworld. Her physical description in the ancient sources is memorably specific. She had one leg made of brass and one leg of a donkey, which she concealed by transforming into whatever form was most useful at the moment. A beautiful woman, a dog, or a cow. Her preferred method was to appear as an attractive woman to lone male travelers at night, seduce them, and devour them. Aristophanes included her as a comic monster in his play The Frogs, written in 405 BCE, where Dionysus and his slave Xanthiosa encounter her on the road to the underworld and are thoroughly terrified before she simply goes away. The comedy suggests she was well known enough to Greek audiences to be funny when played for laughs, which means she was frightening enough in the original tradition to carry the joke. She belongs to a family of female night demons, alongside Lamia and Mormo, that ancient Greek parents invoke to frighten children into behaving after dark. Aswang. The Aswang is the most feared creature in Philippine folklore, and part of what makes it so effective as a horror concept is that it looks exactly like your neighbor. By day, the Aswang appears entirely ordinary, a human being living among humans doing ordinary things. By night, it transforms into something predatory, and the specific form it takes depends on the region. In some traditions, it becomes a ghoul that digs up and consumes corpses. In others, it is a viscera sucker that perches on rooftops and extends a long proboscis tongue through the floorboards to extract unborn fetuses from pregnant women sleeping below. The Manananggal variant separates at the waist, growing bat wings from its upper torso and flying off while the lower half remains standing in the dark. One of the most unsettling folkloric details is the sound it makes, a rapid ticking that gets quieter, not louder, as the Aswang gets closer. The volume of the sound is inverted from what you'd expect, so silence is the warning. The Aswang's connection to the demonic was reinforced when Christianity arrived in the Philippines. What had been indigenous supernatural creatures were reframed as agents of hell, though the creatures themselves predate that framing by an unknown number of centuries. Oni. In Japanese mythology, Oni are the enforcers of Jigoku, the Buddhist hell, and they are exactly as terrifying as that job description requires. Massive humanoid demons standing far taller than any human, with skin that is either deep red or vivid blue, wild black hair, one or two curved horns, and an iron-spiked club called a kanabo. Oni patrol the various levels of Jigoku, making certain that sinners receive their assigned tortures without interruption. They serve Emma-O, the Japanese equivalent of Yama, the Hindu and Buddhist god of death, who presides over the judgment of souls and dispatches Oni to carry out punishment. The Oni's dual color scheme is not arbitrary. Red Oni are generally described as hot-tempered and violently aggressive, while blue Oni are colder, more calculating, and considered more dangerous for it. Despite their role as demons, Oni have a complicated place in Japanese culture. During the annual Setsubun festival at the start of spring, people throw roasted soybeans inside and outside their homes while shouting Oni wa Soto, Fuku wa Uchi, demons out, good fortune in, driving the Oni away for another year. It is the only entry on this list that has its own major annual holiday, Amit. The ancient Egyptians built their underworld around a single terrifying concept, the second death. Physical death was not the worst thing that could happen to you. Being unmade entirely, ceasing to exist in any form, was considered the ultimate fate to avoid, and Amit was the creature responsible for delivering it. Amit crouched beside the scales of Maat in the Hall of Two Truths, a chimera assembled from Egypt's three most dangerous animals, the head of a crocodile, the forequarters of a lion or leopard, and the hindquarters of a hippopotamus. When a soul arrived for judgment, its heart was weighed against the feather of might, the feather of truth and cosmic order, and if the heart was heavier, meaning the soul had lived without justice or integrity, Amit devoured it. There was no Tartarus, no fire, no eternal torment afterward. There was simply nothing. Amit was not worshipped, had no temples, and received no cult or offerings. She existed in Egyptian religious imagination purely as an instrument of final consequence, and the Book of the Dead is largely a manual for how to avoid her. The 72 demons of the Ars Goetia. The Ars Goetia, a 17th century grimoire forming part of the Lemegeton Clavicula Salomonis, presents hell as a fully functioning feudal monarchy. It lists 72 demons organized by rank, kings, dukes, earls, marquises, and presidents, each with a specific appearance, a specific area of expertise, and a specific number of legions under their command. King Paimon rides a dromedary camel and teaches all arts, sciences, and secrets of the earth. Duke Dantalion has 36 faces and claims to know the thoughts of every person alive. President Marbas appears as a great lion and possesses the power to both cause and cure disease. According to the text, Solomon originally bound all 72 in a brass vessel sealed with magical symbols. After his death, locals discovered the vessel and, believing it contained treasure, melted it open, releasing every demon simultaneously. The Ars Goetia is not an ancient document. It is a 17th century compilation drawing on earlier Renaissance-era grimoires and its claimed Solomonic origin has no historical verification. That said, as a piece of systematic mythological world-building, a complete org chart for Hell with 72 named individuals, each with specific powers and weaknesses, it has no equal. Yama/Emma/Yanluo Wang. One of the oldest concepts of a Hell ruler in recorded human civilization, Yama appears in the Rig Veda as the first mortal ever to die, which by cosmic logic made him the natural king of the dead and the one who blazed the path that every human being would eventually follow. In Hindu tradition, he rides a black buffalo, carries a noose and a mace, and commands 2 four-eyed dogs who roam the living world as his scouts, watching for those about to die. As Buddhism spread across Asia, Yama traveled with it, transforming into Emma O in Japan and Yanluo Wang in China, accumulating new details at each stop. In Chinese tradition, Yanluo Wang governs only the 5th of 10 courts of Hell, Diyu, each court presided over by a different king, each responsible for different sins and different punishments, organized with the kind of meticulous bureaucratic precision that suggests someone genuinely sat down and thought through every possible category of human wrongdoing. It is perhaps the most elaborately designed afterlife punishment system in world mythology. 10 courts, 10 judges, specific torturers mapped to specific transgressions, and a department responsible for reincarnation waiting at the end. Yama began as a single figure in a Vedic hymn. 4,000 years later, he runs a 10-branch operation across multiple civilizations. Cerberus. The most famous guard dog in all of mythology isn't guarding a house or a yard. He's guarding the entire realm of the dead, and he has 3 heads to make sure nothing gets past him. Cerberus sits at the entrance to Hades, the Greek underworld, a massive black 3-headed dog with a mane of writhing snakes and a tail that ends in a serpent's head. His job is simple. The dead get in, and nothing gets out. In all of Greek mythology, only 3 beings ever bypassed him. Heracles physically dragged him out of the underworld as his 12th labor. Orpheus put him to sleep with music so beautiful, even a 3-headed hellhound couldn't resist it. And the Sibyl of Cumae drugged him with a honey cake laced with herbs before leading Aeneas through. Dante later borrowed Cerberus and placed him in the 3rd circle of hell, where he endlessly shreds gluttons to pieces, only to have Virgil throw dirt in all 3 of his mouths to distract him. It's worth noting that earlier Greek sources sometimes described him with 50 or even 100 heads, but 3 became the standard. Whatever the number, the message was the same. Whatever goes in